if we're going to export survey figures, there are a number of issues which depend upon what your client really needs. We have a site. This comes from the framework dataset. We're zoomed to the location of this network. See that network? And it is faster to zoom to a network than to all the survey points because Civil 3D has less to figure out. We can remove those. I also took the liberty of making a DWF of the banded surface so that we could dispense with a map and still see what's going on. We have a bunch of survey figures. Let's pump them into the drawing, and we generally want to do this into a clean drawing since each insert of the civil figures and removal afterwards will add more parcel segments to your drawing. So inside our current drawing, if I select everything, you'll see I have my DWF surface, underlay, a bunch of parcel segments, and a number of survey figures. So there are a couple of figures I generate automatically for vaults and those sort of things that I actually do not want to export. So I'm just going to remove them from this drawing. Let's simply detach our DWF. So now we're down to only the many figures that got generated in the drawing. There are a couple other things I may want to add or remove in terms of cleaning things up, since our goal might be simply digital line work. The easiest thing to do and the easiest thing to provide any AutoCAD using house is to actually give them a DWF. There is in Civil 3D export to DWF, which is basically a wizardized version of going to model, going to plot, picking the right plotter, and the important issue in here are your DWF setups and the custom properties thereof. And the key one here is you probably want to include layer information so they can turn things on and off. You can also control resolution and DPI in the DWF, which sometimes really helps. So once we get that set up, we'll just do that for the current plot. We'll pick some reasonable size sheet, generate a preview, just see what it's going to look like, and here it would reduce it down to monochrome. Well, I really don't want to do that, so we'll use the color version of the STB. The framework obviously supports both STB and CTB these days, so both are there. And this is the way that I control what my finished line weights and etc. would be for my client output, rather than messing with all the layers and the styles in Civil 3D to get that stuff right. Once again, we could preview that one. That looks like what I want to be in my DWF. I say okay, generate my DWF, and I get a result. So now let's see what that result looks like. Could do this in AutoCAD. I'm just going to do it once again in Civil 3D. Bring in my exported DWF. Key issues here, I want to make sure nothing is specified, so it's going to 0, 0. We'll end up in the same space. I end up with a DWF, and you'll notice colors are slightly different. So if I select it, I can, of course, turn it on and off, whether it's monochrome now. I have layers that I can turn on and off, so I can select and pick multiple layers, turn stuff on and off, turn everything back on here. DWFs have automatic color adjustment built into them, so we could see if I don't want that automatic color adjustment happening, I can say no, and I will get exactly the same color model that I produced out of my CTB or STB file. That's the easiest way to get all the figures out, provide them to somebody else. They're all non-editable, pretty easy to clean up, produce a decent AutoCAD level deliverable. Now if I want to go out to raw AutoCAD by itself and actually end up with something that's editable and manageable as a real AutoCAD drawing, I'm going to use either the export command or export to AutoCAD command in Civil 3D to achieve that result. The difference is one works in a dialog box. The export to AutoCAD command, and let's look at that at the command line so you can see what that looks like. So that's export to AutoCAD. You have multiple releases, but there's a raw export to AutoCAD command. It will produce AutoCAD objects from Civil 3D objects with a command line interface. The other key issue before you run an export is over in your options on the AEC editor tab. You want to make sure that maintain, resolved, layer, color, and line type is checked. If it's unchecked, you may get no result at all when you export the file. So you want to make sure that's true. Apply and OK. We can export Civil 3D drawing. This allows you to do a whole bunch of files at once. If you got everything all set up, good to go, you can bulk process a whole set of drawings that will even include insert explodes of XREF stuff. I tend to want to do things one at a time so I can control and manage those results a little bit better. We're definitely not going to include sheets since I don't want anything in any of the layouts to show up. I have given it a destination prefix, so from my drawing name I get a different example. And as you can see, we're just exporting all this stuff out of the model tab. Export settings probably should have that maintain checkbox in here. It currently does not. We got a number of versions, so we can go all the way back to 2000 formats using export. On the front tab, you also have the option to go to MicroStation DGN. Most of the time, I think it's easier to first export it to AutoCAD DWG and then export it to DGN after you've cleaned things up a bit if you really want editable stuff out in DGN. So then we write our export. Civil 3D will chug away for a second, and we end up with a finished drawing. Close my EPCAP tab, hop over into raw AutoCAD and see what the result looks like. So here's our exported file over in raw AutoCAD. We probably want to take a look at a couple of things. We'll see the figures come out as 3D polylines. Notice the colors are all set individually. So we need to probably make that change to everything. So we're just going to select everything in my drawing and use Control A. Change the color, not the layer, but the color to bilayer. Now there's our fence on the fence layer with a color determined by layer, which is probably what your client wants. However, there's some other issues here since when it goes out to AutoCAD, you may, and we'll just zoom in here and you can see that we were using markers on some of our figures that use PD mode markers, so those will end up with lots of little lines. So one of the things I probably want to do to clean things up here is grab all the lines, select all of them, include those in a selection set, simply delete them. So now I've got rid of the hanging CADs out of my figures. So my client may want everything flattened down to 2D and not as 3D objects. So I could select everything, use the flatten command, don't need to remove the hidden lines, and I, just like that, end up with 3D polylines all at 0 elevation. If I wanted all those 3D polylines converted to 2D polylines, that functionality is not in AutoCAD, but it is over in Civil 3D. Open the drawing in Civil 3D. go to Modify, Design, Convert 3D to 2D polylines, select all the converted 3D polylines to convert, and say OK. And then the odds are you're probably going to need to, or you're probably going to want to W-block all those objects out to a new clean drawing name. From a survey database, it's relatively easy these days to produce clean AutoCAD level objects built from the figures, whether you create those figures in survey or you create and use those figures on the design side of your design process.